All right, welcome back. Now that we have our core gameplay all set up and everything's working, it's time to start adding some additional layers. So we're going to add animation to our game. So what we'll do here is we'll set up our blend space, set up the different parameters, link the animations, and then set up the animation blueprint for our character. So without further ado, let's open up the project again. As a quick recap, at the moment, whenever we're moving, everything is very static. We're all in a T-pose. So if you head over to the content folder and then the shooter mannequin folder and the animations folder, remember we implemented these, we added these to the project when we added our weapon. You'll see a bunch of animations in here. And if I click on one, so say for example, there should be an enemy walk. If I double click on enemy walk, this will open the persona editor. Now, Unreal has a lot of extensive features and support for animations. You can do a lot of stuff with this. This could basically be an entire course if you really deep dive into it. But for our needs, we'll stick to the basics. Um, Important to know is that everything always starts with a skeleton, right? And as more functionality and features are added, they become available at the top here. So we start out with a skeleton, then a mesh was added, so we have our mesh, then we have our animation list, and then we have our physics list, and so forth. At the bottom right here, I can actually also preview different animations. So if I double click on one, you'll see the animation playback. So as long as the skeleton remains the same, I can preview the different animations for that skeleton. So let me close this down real quick. And the first thing that we'll do is we will set up a blend space. Um, so what is a blend space? A blend space is a way for us to blend different animations together. So say that we have locomotion, our characters walking forwards, backwards, sideways, left, right. Well, we can take the different animations and combine them into one final animation. But for this, we need to, know how to blend these. So that is where the blend space comes into play. So in this folder, in our shooter mannequin animations folder, I'm going to right click, select animation, and add a blend space. And then I'm going to select my UE4 mannequin skeleton. I'm going to give this a name. So let me have a look at my note. I'm going to give this a name, main player blend space. There we go. Then I'm going to double click it, and this will open up our blend space. You'll see it here at the bottom. What you'll also see is that at the bottom we'll have a grid, right? And this is where we will set up our blend space. So the first thing that we'll have to do is actually set up our parameters. So in order to link elements to this, we'll need to know what our parameters are here at the left and at the right. So the horizontal and the vertical, at the top and the bottom. So if we go to our asset details here, I can open up my horizontal axis, and we're going to give this a name. We're going to say our horizontal axis is going to be the direction. So direction, right? And the direction is going to be between a value of minus 180, so this will be degrees, and a maximum of 180. And I'll leave the rest as default, but you'll see here that everything changes from minus 180 to positive 180. My vertical axis, that's going to be our speed, right? So the higher we are, the faster we are moving, the lower we are, the slower we are moving. In the middle is going to be walking forwards, and all the way to both the right and the left is going to be walking backwards. So I'm going to set my minimum value to 350 and my maximum value, my minimum value to 0 and my maximum value to 350. Like so. And you'll see this updated on the side here as well. Good. So with that set up, we kind of have defined our axis, our grid here. So next up, we need to add animations to the blend space, and we can do that by drag and dropping them from the asset browser in the bottom right onto the grid. Right. So what we'll do is we're going to look for our jogging animation. So let's have a look. We have jog forward. If I There we go. Jog forward with rifle. I'm going to drag this one and I'm going to drag it to the top in the middle, like so. And as you can see, our character starts moving. I can click on this green pip to preview different animations, but because we only have one animation, well, we're only going to see one thing. Something else that I can do is I can show the animation names by clicking on this button. I'm actually going to do that because that is going to help us to kind of see what's going on. I can also show the triangulation. You won't see much yet, but in a moment that will become clear what that will do. All right. Now, the next animation that we'll add is the jog LT rifle. So jog to the left with the rifle. I'm going to add it next to our jog forward rifle. So if I then move my green pip, you'll notice, right, our character is moving to the left. So walking backwards. Go back to the middle, jogging forward. Next up, jog RT. If I move my pip, it's moving to the other direction. And in this case, he's moving backwards, right? So it's basically a reverse animation in this case. So next up, I'll just drag and drop all the other animations in here, and you kind of see what will happen, right? So um, we'll have our jog backwards. So I'm gonna add our jog backwards to both sides because at backwards 180, that's gonna be our result, right? So backwards jogging. If I move it, you can see how it's transitioning between the different animations. Good. Then standstill is going to be idle. So let's move to idle rifle hip. And let's add that one to the center, like so. And as you can see, everything starts to connect. So if I then blend forward, I will start moving. And I can move everything back. But there might be some weird, see, if I'm in this location, there I have some weird results here. That's because I don't have a backwards blend set up correctly. So what I'll do is I will also take my idle rifle hip and move that to both sides, left and right. So that way I have a full blend definition on the bottom axis, like at the bottom here and also at the top. Right, so no matter which direction I am in, I can always blend to the different animations. Good. All right, and that's about it really. So that's the basic setup um, for this. Now the more complex you can have multiple layers in here, of course. You can control how many divisions you have. So with AAA games, you'll probably have a bunch of these in here to have your full locomotion setup. But in our case, this will be more than enough for a locomotion. So I'm gonna save this out and gonna minimize this real quick. Then head back to our animations folder and I'm going to add an animation blueprint. So I'm gonna right click and then animation blueprint, like so. And again, we're going to select our skeleton, like so. Hit OK, and let's call this animbp underscore character. Let's open this one up. And notice how this is also added to our setup here, right? So to our persona setup, the new tab has been added. Also notice that we have two event graphs here. So let's have a look. The event graph is this one. So this one will be used to drive the input of the animation blueprint. So it's going to gather the information to be processed. Then if we head over to our animation graph is going to use these parameters, which are controlled by the event graph to generate our final animation results. Okay, so we're going to first set up our event graph. You'll see we have two nodes already available. Going to be event blueprint update animation and try get pawn owner, right? So the first thing that we'll do is we'll connect our try get pawn owner and we're going to check if this is valid. So do is valid and connect that. Good. Now thinking about the blend space that we just set up, we have our speed and our direction. So in our case, we'll have to set up two ways, right? Set up the ways to get our values. So first off, let's get the speed. So let's get our pawn owner. Let's get the velocity, like so. Let's get the length. That's good. Let's just get vector lengths without the get, like so. All right. And we're going to save this to a new variable. So we're going to add a new variable and call this character speed. This is going to be a float, like so. And we're going to store this. So we're going to drag our character speed. We're going to set the speed like so. So is valid. We're going to set our character speed. All right, good. Then next up, we are going to want to have our direction, right? We want to calculate what way, what movement direction that's relative to our facing direction of our character. Because our animations are always in local space, right? We kind of want to know in which direction we are moving. So if you're moving sideways, left, right, and so forth. So for that, we will again get some rotation information. So let's get our active forward factor, like so, because this is going to be the reference, right? We're going to compare our movement direction relative to the forward-facing vector of our character. That's basically our idea here. So let's get our rotation from x vector, like so. And we'll also convert our movement velocity, the actual direction that we're moving, we'll also convert it into a vector. So a rotation, I mean. So rotation from x vector. So now we want to know what the difference is between those two. So we get delta rotator, like so. Okay. So that way we know, well, what is the difference compared to our forward factor, forward-facing vector that we are moving. So then we know if we were walking sideways and so forth and so forth. Good. All right. So I only want to know the yaw. So actually what we'll also do here is we're going to split our struct bin. And we're going to store our yaw, and that's going to be our input for our direction. So that's going to be a value between minus 180 and positive 180. So we're going to create a new variable and call this character. Oh, if it wants to come on, character direction. And let's set this value yaw. There we go. Good. Now let's hit compile. Let's hit save. I can actually see the execution happening here already, right? But not much is going to happen yet. But you can kind of see what's going on. All right. So next up, we're going to set up our animation graph. So let's open up the animation graph. And we're going to right click and add state machine. So we're going to add a new state machine. Going to give it a name, character state machine. Right. And in here we are actually going to define how our blend is going to happen and so forth. And then at the end, everything is going to end up in our output pose right here. Right. So next up, let's open up our state machine, because this is how we will set up our blend, right? So if you've used Unity before, then this will seem somewhat familiar. If you ever set up an animation controller, this is very much similar. So once inside of our character state machine, we're going to add a state. I'm going to right click, add a state, and let's call it locomotion. All right, let's connect our entry node to the locomotion. So this will create a conduit or a link. And let's double click on our locomotion. And similar as at our anim graph level, we kind of have an output result here. And this is where our blend space will come into play. So what we can do now is, let's have a look. So if I select the asset browser on the side, I can actually go and look for our blend space. And I can drag and drop the blend space in here. You'll see we have our variables here and connect that to our results, like so. All right. And then next up, I'm actually going to connect our variables that we created here. So I'm going to create my character speed, set that to my speed, and my character direction, set that to my direction, like so. All right, so let's hit compile. Let's hit save. And notice that we get some previews at the bottom here, and also our character is now in his idle pose. So if I now go to the anim preview editor on the side here, I can actually start previewing these. So if I increase this, my character speed, right, you can see that my blend is happening and everything's working correctly. Then if I change my character direction, right, everything seems to be working fine. Negative angle, excellent, right? So everything seems to be working fine. So as long as my input will be correct then from my other sources, then we'll be good to go. Excellent. Right, so next what we need to do is we need to link the animation blueprint to the player character. So let's close this down. And let's head over to our player character. So go to our blueprints folder and open up the player character. All right. Okay. And then let's select our mesh component and scroll down to our animation. And we're going to use animation blueprint. We're going to select our animation class, and that's going to be our animBP character. That's going to be our animation class. So select that one. And let's hit compile. Let's hit save. And let's give it a go. There we go. Notice how our character now has animation. And we can walk sideways in both directions. And everything seems to be working well. All right. I'll leave it here, and the next video we'll continue on our setup.